All right. Hi. Thanks for coming to this session. I'm Krissie. I am the head of digital influencing at Scope, the charity. Who here has heard of Scope? That's good. It's good to see. So we are the UK's leading disability equality charity, and we campaign to make the world a more equal place for disabled people. One of our key strategic themes for the last year and a half has been looking at the digital space and the impact that that has on disabled people. And what we found is that when tech works for disabled people, it's absolutely life-changing. So it can give people opportunities to live independently in a way that they never could before. So in the last 10 years, people can socialise, go to work, control their homes, and do all kinds of things that were really challenging before and that they would have to have someone else do for them. However, we still got a long way to go in terms of technology enabling disabled people to live independently. And today, I'm going to talk to you a bit about inclusive design and what that means and what the impact can be, and also about what disabled people's experiences are when they go online, and then what we can all do to make those experiences better. So, who here knows about inclusive design and what that is? Okay. Do we have any designers here? Do most of you work in data? Okay, cool. Okay, so data's still very relevant in terms of inclusive design. Inclusive design, and when you're thinking inclusively in your work, it really means about considering that people are going to be interacting with your product or service that represent extreme diversity. So not yourself and not your closest circle of friends. It's a really interesting concept in data because, as you all know, we're moving into an AI-fueled world, if it isn't already. And what we've found is that with machine learning, it tends to treat data of disabled people as an anomaly. And that's because disabled people often do things differently. So the way they interact with online products would probably be quite different because they've had to hack their way around it because it's not particularly accessible. So lots of machine learning will see data from a disabled person and discount it. And what that means is that we're moving into a world where disabled people aren't part of the evolution of technology because it doesn't consider them as a customer. And we already have a dilemma that generally disabled people aren't considered a consumer group in general. So it's just perpetuating that because our own biases are going into technological biases. So inclusive design as a concept has proven to make products and services far more valuable for absolutely everybody. So it's a fantastic concept to take hold of. The first instance that I have found in my research on inclusive design was from a guy called Turi Pellegrino, and he had a lover, and she was a blind woman. And basically, when he was away, he liked to have love letters from her. So she would dictate her love letters to someone who would write them and then send them to him. Well, he didn't really like someone else being the middleman between him and his lover, so he created a machine whereby she could sense the keys, and she could fill the letters, so she could type out her own letters. That was in the 1800s, early 1900s. The typewriter changed the working world for everyone. Oh, and also the OXO Good Grips line, which is what the picture is of, is also a great example of inclusive design. So we have one in all of our kitchens. It's a vegetable peeler. And basically these were designed for people with dexterity impairments like arthritis. Okay, so 1 in 5 people in the UK is disabled, and there are 13.3 million disabled people in the UK. That's only increasing with an ageing population, and we're seeing more and more people with a number of disabilities at one time. 40% of households in the UK have at least one disabled person, and that's 11 million households. Has anyone heard of the Purple Pound? So Purple Pound is the spending power of disabled people. And again, generally, disabled people are not considered or included as a core consumer group. And disability-related products are incredibly expensive because of this lack of competition. And actually, it's ridiculous because the spending power of the disabled people is huge. And it's a really vast untapped market. So, in terms of people's experiences online, what we've found is whilst technology is incredible and life-changing for disabled people, more so than non-disabled people, there's huge barriers that they'll experience online when interacting with simple mainstream websites. This is things like Amazon, Skyscanner, still can't book a flight online if you're blind, and many others. So when tested, 1 million of the most popular, most used websites was found that 98% of those million did not meet the minimum standard accessibility guidelines. Does anyone here know what accessibility means? So it's basically how accessible your website is for people who have access requirements. I'll also add that access requirements don't necessarily mean that someone is disabled. It could be that someone is temporarily disabled, so they could have broken an arm, they could be holding a baby, they could be in a loud environment, they could be in a dark room. So making your product accessible is better for absolutely everybody. So I'm going to tell you a story that someone told me when we were chatting to our customers from Scope. So there's a guy, he's visually impaired, and he really wants to buy something from Sports Direct. So he goes on the website, and the website isn't built for his visual impairment. And as I said, there are guidelines, it's called WCAG, which actually specify exactly what you need to do online to make things accessible for disabled people. So he goes on sportsdirect.com, it's not accessible, and so he said, okay, mostly apps are more accessible, so I download the app and I'll buy what I want through there. So he downloads the app and he goes to purchase his product through the app. That's not accessible either. And he's like, oh, it's really annoying, I'm going to have to go into the store. So he heads over into the store and he says, I've tried to buy something on the website and on your app, but I can't use it with my screen reader, which is a piece of software that you would use when you're visually impaired to read a website or an app or things on your phone. And they turned around to him and said, that's out of stock, but you can get it through the app. And he was like, but I can't use the app and I can't use the website. So I think what this is that people want to spend their money, and also often with the built environment being so inaccessible for disabled people, the internet is plan B. So when plan A doesn't work and plan B doesn't work, there isn't a plan C, and that's really frustrating. So we have a crowdsourcing tool where we ask people to report inaccessible experiences online and ask them to tell us a bit more about what their experiences are. And here are some of the things that we've heard. I'm severely visually impaired, so navigating highly visual web pages with lots of images that I can't make sense of is hugely frustrating. The thing is, this is quite an easy fix because you can actually tag any images that you put onto your website so that someone with a screen reader can actually understand what that image is. And it's really tough when shopping if there's no product descriptions if you're using a screen reader. I use Trainline to book seats for my wheelchair, but now I have to call. It's not too bad, but as for the rest of civilization, it's much easier by website. So we're all used to booking trains online. Trainline was accessible, and then they did an upgrade, and then it became inaccessible. So obviously they dropped the ball on that one, but it means that for people booking through Trainline, when it was previously working, suddenly it's not working anymore. Voice-activated assistants don't work properly for me. I need more time to complete my sentences. That's quite a simple one to solve. Holiday, hotel, travel booking websites are deliberately confusing and anxiety-inducing. Too much content, too noisy. I don't know if anyone's been on booking.com when you're looking at hotels and it's like, there's 3 people looking at this hotel, there's only 2 rooms left. You're like, oh my gosh, okay, I've got to... But actually that can be really stressful and have quite a big impact on someone who has a mental health problem. So, online, disabled people, when they experience a barrier, will tend to go somewhere else. And that often means spending more money. So instead of using Skyscanner, they'll probably have to phone up an airline to book their ticket, and therefore they're really not going to get the best deal. So they'll become loyal customers to the organisations and businesses that actually don't put barriers in the way of them buying things from them. So it's a really wise business decision to have an accessible offer. Okay, so here's some data from our crowdsourcing tool, where people flag up what they're experiencing in the digital world. I hope you guys can read this okay, but I'll read it out anyway. So we asked people, how often are you unable to complete a task online? And you can see that 52% said some of the time, and 19% said quite often unable to complete a task online. And you think about how we interact with our phones and the things we do day to day, we organise most of our lives online, so that must be incredibly frustrating and time consuming. We asked people to agree or disagree to this statement: I would lose trust in a company if I was unable to use their website or app. And 43% said agree, another 43% said strongly agree. So people lose trust in a business that isn't thinking about them as a consumer. Here are the most frustrating online experiences that people have told us about. So lack of poor quality audio description. So when you're watching content and you're blind, it needs to be audio described so you can take that in. Netflix, about 30% of their content is audio described, but it seems quite shocking to me that a blind consumer would still have to pay 100% of the price to have Netflix, even though they can only access 30% of the content. You'd think they should get some kind of discount on that, or Netflix could improve the accessibility of their service. Voice-activated assistants like Amazon Echo, Google Home, smart speakers, Siri on iPhones don't work properly for me. So if you have a speech impairment, or if you're deaf, then you can't interact with a voice assistant. Actually, I do know that Amazon are working on enabling Alexa to understand people who have a speech impairment. So look forward to when that comes out. Having to wait a long time for accessible travel services, or having to go to a different departure arrival location due to accessible facilities. That's really frustrating. For a lot of people, it's just not having the right information on a website of, say they're going to an event, and they don't have the information about the accessibility of the event itself. And actually, when someone's building the website, all they need to think about is actually what would a disabled person's experience be at the venue, and then they can put that information in. And often, like all too often, people go along to a venue thinking it's accessible because that information, they may have called up and someone says, yeah, there's no stairs, and then they go and there's one stair, so they can't get in. So there's a barrier to the actual real life experience that could have been avoided with just a bit more information online. Image descriptions on websites are missing or no good. Talked about that. Lack of or poor quality subtitles. Don't know if you guys have used the YouTube captioning thing. So, I mean, I've used it before, and it just comes out with gobbledygook, really. It doesn't really represent what I'm actually saying. So for my deaf friends and colleagues, it's, that's completely inaccessible to what's on YouTube. It is improving, though, over time. But still, shouldn't replace other ways of accessibility. So there are no options to notify a company of my accessibility needs when making a purchase. Not having staff trained in basic accessibility needs at a business and having to explain my situation more than necessary. And then this one, websites or apps are difficult to navigate. I mean, that's annoying for everyone, but particularly if you have a cognitive impairment. And then the biggest frustration, the most irritating thing for everyone is so simple. It's literally that there's no clearly visible email address to use as a contact option. So any business just needs to, if they've got an external facing site, they just need to have a contact option there so people can say what kind of barriers they're experiencing. So all this data that we're gathering, we're going to be putting it up, so it's public facing. So it's going to be on our website that I'll show you guys at the end. And hopefully with a bit of that public facingness, people will be able to see that and respond to it. So we're hoping that we'll get press opportunities and businesses understanding what the main barriers are as well. So we asked people, how does it feel when you cannot complete a task online? It's horrible not being able to read the text or instructions on the screen because it becomes blurry or jumps around, and it's really demoralizing. Annoyed, angry that I may have to go to great lengths to accomplish this, what should be a simple task. For example, pay someone else costs to do so, arrange someone to call, pay large unnecessary sums to accomplish the task in another way or with another company, etc. So, how are Scope responding? So, we're running a big program called the Big Hack, and that's kind of a multifaceted program which includes hackathons that we do with businesses. We are looking for tech people to contact us because we really, really want to have our next hackathon. What we do is we hack around online barriers and real-life barriers as well. So any tech people interested in getting involved, that would be absolutely fantastic. So we also have an online resource library which helps people get started with inclusive design and accessibility, and we're also looking for anyone who has any kind of knowledge or expertise in the area to contribute articles to that. But anyone who wants to learn from that, it's on the Big Hack website, again, which I'll show you at the end. We've got a reporting tool so we can constantly find out what the digital landscape is like for disabled people, and we don't have to pay lots of money to do market research and survey people. It's an ongoing questionnaire online, and people get put into a prize draw, which gives them a bit of incentive to tell us this information. We've done some research that looks at national data sets, and it's finding out a bit more around the business case for inclusive design and the commercial value in that. So we've looked at the difference in spending patterns between households with a disabled person in and non-disabled households, and where the spending patterns differ. And in some industries, the spend is widely different. And then we found out a lot more about why that is through a survey. So, for example, households with a disabled person in spend 65% less on education. When we interrogated that to find out why that was, it was because of accessibility barriers or fears of accessibility barriers. So things like open university online, lack of accessibility of accessing that is causing people not to go on to further education, and also the same with universities in the built environment. So we'll be launching that business case at the end of this month, and that will also be on our website. And it looks at kind of specific industries and where the barriers are for people in those industries, and also what the opportunity is. We're also going to be doing an exclusion calculator, so as a business you can put in how many customers you have, and then we can give a percentage of how many are likely to be disabled. So Here's the details. Our website is www.bighack.org.uk. We've got Twitter @ScopeBigHack. Do follow us. And you can drop us a line at bighack@scope.org.uk. Again, people to participate in a big hackathon would be absolutely fantastic. I think I've got about 5 minutes now, so any questions would be great. Hello.
Have you had a conversation with providers of data analytics or data visualization platforms, in order to tie the two things together, really? I wonder what kind of response you might have got from them in terms of what they can do.
Yeah, so the question was, have we talked to providers of data visualization platforms? The answer is no. So we've only just launched the Big Hack this month, and a kind of any tech support would be really fantastic. No, we haven't been thinking about kind of data visualization beyond the simple stuff that's the graphs that are just published on our website. So we could chat afterwards. Any other questions? Oh.
Just designers.
So the question was.
The question was, so in terms of technical expertise, what kind of people are you looking for? So are you just looking for sort of like front-end designers, content designers, or are you looking for software developers as well?
So I think it would depend on the challenge. And I think, actually, data visualization has come up because for a visually impaired person, reading data is really, really tough. So, first kind of hackathon we could do, which would be amazing, is just a data visualization hackathon to create accessible data. But we've got a number of challenges. We're putting them up on the Big Hack website, and the idea is that if we get enough people that respond to the challenge, then we'll set up a hackathon. So I suppose it is dependent on the challenges that we put up, but there's a lot in terms of accessibility. Even kind of reverse engineering a voice assistant so more people can interact with it would be fantastic. Hi.
Do you use any of the free online accessibility tools, like testing tools?
Yeah, so we've got a couple articles up about that. What I would say is they're really fantastic as a starting point. Internally, we use WebAIM, the Wave Chrome plugin, which is quite good. But what we do recommend is that you go a bit further, because it just gives you very basic, like it just looks at the surface and it doesn't look at kind of navigation or anything. So Scope actually offer a product testing service. We have a research panel of 500 disabled people who can test your product. So that will help you understand the whole user journey, rather than just kind of superficial like alt text and headlining and stuff like that. Okay, no more questions? All right, thanks everyone.